On an April morning in 1453, a city older than many civilizations woke to its last sunrise as an empire. Constantinople, jewel of Byzantium, straddled continents and centuries, its walls a tapestry of victories and sieges. For 1,000 years, it had defied attackers. For 5 days, it would face one of the most determined conquerors of the age. This is the story of how a city fell. A clash of strategy and desperation, of cannon and crossbow, of leadership and sacrifice, and of an age ending and another beginning. The stage was set by centuries of change. The Byzantine Empire had been a shadow of its former self, surrounded by a rising Ottoman state that had swallowed Anatolia and the Balkans. The young Sultan Mehmed II, only 21, had a vision far beyond mere raiding. He sought an imperial capital, a symbol to rival Rome. He prepared meticulously. Armies were mobilized, ships built, supplies gathered. The Ottomans surrounded Constantinople with engineers and artillery, including cannons of unprecedented size. The Byzantines, led by Emperor Constantine XV Palaiologos, knew their numbers were small. Their walls, ancient and formidable, had repelled invaders for centuries. Yet the city was strained, its population reduced, its wealth diminished, its hope clinging to stubborn faith and alliances that failed to arrive. Diplomacy and deception played their parts. Christian rulers debated aiding Constantinople, distracted by their own conflicts. The Pope urged crusade. Venice and Genoa prized trade more than certain ruin. Mehmed exploited every diplomatic opening. He negotiated with Genoa and Venice, bribed potential allies, and cultivated a narrative that he would be a magnanimous ruler, that Constantinople should surrender peacefully to avoid massacre. He offered honors and privileges to mercenaries and foreign captains who might switch sides. He also constructed a fleet and a chain to block the Golden Horn, while preparing siege lines and artillery positions, turning diplomacy into part of a strategic encirclement. On the walls, Constantine V was a figure of resolute defiance. He was a hands-on commander, patching breaches, rallying tired citizens and soldiers, and enforcing order in a city strained by famine and fear. With only a few thousand defenders, Byzantines, Genoese, Venetians, and mercenaries, the defense relied on the city's concentric walls. The massive Theodosian walls with their outer and inner ramparts, towers, and ditches. The defenders used every advantage: firepots, Greek fire in limited supply, archers, and the arching heights of the marble walls. Yet the defenders faced an existential problem: modern gunpowder artillery. The enormous Ottoman cannons, built by European engineers and forged by Orban, pounded the outer walls and shook centuries-old masonry. Mehmed's strategy was relentless variety. He knew direct assaults against intact walls were costly, so he combined bombardment with mining, storm attacks, naval blockades, and psychological pressure. His engineers sought weak points. Sappers probed beneath the foundations. Night after night, Ottoman troops tested the walls with scaling ladders and battering rams. The Ottomans also attempted to force entry by sea. The chain across the Golden Horn had protected the inner harbor, but Mehmed ordered an audacious solution: to transport ships overland on greased logs and rails, bypassing the chain and launching them into the harbor. A logistical feat that stunned contemporaries and allowed Ottoman vessels to threaten the city's rear. The defenders struck back with tenacity. Genoese captain Giovanni Giustiniani, wounded yet unbowed, became a symbol of stubborn defense, holding the landward side with disciplined men. The Venetians and Genoese sailors repelled several naval probes. Citizens of Constantinople, women, children, old men, manned barricades, hauled stones, stitched bandages. Inside the city, religious leaders urged prayers while commanders distributed arms. Yet fractures appeared. Food and ammunition dwindled. The population debated surrender versus fight to the death. Morale wavered when the great bombardment made breaches in the once impregnable walls. and when enemies gained footholds through calculated diversions. The climactic assault began in earnest on May 29, 1453. After weeks of siege, Mehmed ordered a concerted attack. The artillery had done its work. The outer wall near the Gate of St. Romanus had been battered, and sappers had created undermining channels. Simultaneously, the Ottomans launched waves of infantry, cavalry reserves, and elite janissaries at the chosen sectors. The defenders countered with countercharges, desperate sallies, and the throwing of Greek fire and molten metal. In the narrow lanes atop the walls, close combat raged. For hours it seemed the walls might hold, until breaches widened and the numbers and fresh reserves of the attackers began to tell. In one critical instance, Byzantine lines were undermanned due to the wound and later absence of Justiniani, whose injury and retreat left a gap the Ottomans exploited. Turning points multiplied. The arrival of fresh Ottoman troops through a breached section and the simultaneous naval pressure in the Golden Horn overwhelmed defenders, balancing scant reserves. Panic and confusion spread. Some units held, others collapsed. Constantine himself moved among the ramparts, exhorting his men. Historian accounts, some later mythologized, say the emperor removed his imperial insignia, donned simpler armor, and fought among the last defenders. As the Ottomans poured into the city, hand-to-hand combat moved from the walls into the alleys and churches. Looting, fires, and slaughter accompanied the fall. The precise fate of Constantine the Fiend is disputed. Some claim he died in combat on the ramparts, others that he disappeared in the chaos. His death symbolized the end of Byzantine imperial continuity. The consequences were immediate and far-reaching. Constantinople was transformed into an Ottoman capital. Hagia Sophia became a mosque. Churches, palaces, and homes were repopulated with new citizens, artisans, and administrators. The fall shattered the psychological bulwark of medieval Christendom. A capital that had stood as the eastern anchor of Roman legacy now belonged to a rising Islamic empire. Trade routes shifted. European powers reassessed commodities and overland routes. An impetus grew for maritime exploration and the circumnavigation of obstacles that had once made Constantinople the pivot of East-West exchange. The Ottomans consolidated power, expanding deeper into Europe and the Mediterranean, and Mehmed II secured a reputation as a conqueror and state builder. But the fall also generated cultural and human narratives. Survivors told of bravery and betrayal. Artists and chroniclers memorialized the last defenders' deeds. Refugees carried manuscripts, art, and knowledge to the West, contributing subtly to the Renaissance. The dramatic end of Constantinople became a story used by different sides for political and religious purposes. A call for crusades, a justification for Ottoman legitimacy, and a mournful symbol for Greek national memory centuries later. History did not end with the city's capture. The Ottoman state rebuilt and repopulated the city, blending Byzantine administrative structures with Ottoman institutions. Mehmed welcomed scholars and artisans, and Constantinople, renamed Istanbul in everyday speech, grew into a cosmopolitan hub. Yet the echoes of May 1453 persisted, in liturgies, in art, and in collective memory. For Byzantium, it was a terminal moment. For Europe and the Islamic world, it marked a pivotal hinge between medieval and early modern eras. The fall of Constantinople is not merely a tale of cannons and walls. It is a study of leadership and vision, of technological change colliding with tradition, of human courage and tragic consequence. It shows how a determined ruler with resources and strategy can overturn centuries of security, and how the ripple effects of a single siege can reshape trade, culture, and geopolitics for generations. The stones of the Haggid walls still stand in memory and in ruins. Their story is a reminder that empires rise and fall, that cities can both survive and be reborn, and that history's turning points are made of decisions, sacrifices, and chance. When we look back at that final dawn over the Golden Horn, we see not only the fall of a city, but the end of one world and the beginning of another. The last Byzantine emperor vanished among the smoke and the cries, but the legacy of Constantinople, its art, its law, its remembered glories, continued to shape both East and West. The city that fell in 1453 rose again under a different name and ruler, testifying that from destruction, new orders emerge, and that the story of civilizations is an endless cycle of endings and rebirths.